Chapter 6 of the Adventures of Puss in Boots, Jr. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Kurt from Tucson, Arizona. The Adventures of Puss in Boots, Jr. by David Cory. Puss follows Wee Willie Winkie. The vesper bells were ringing as Puss Jr. entered the great gate that led into the city of Babylon. Along the street the lamps were being lighted, and their flickering gleams sent the shadows hiding in building and alley. Puss, however, in spite of shadows, trudged on with a brave heart, waiting for an opportunity to get his supper and a comfortable place to sleep. Suddenly he was startled by a strange sight. A small boy in his nightgown came racing down the street. Wee Willie Winkie runs through the town, upstairs and downstairs in his nightgown, rapping at the windows, crying through the lock, "Are the children in their beds? It's past 8 o'clock." "Wait for me!" cried Puss Jr., but Wee Willie Winkie did not stop. On he ran, turning the next corner before Puss could overtake him. Halfway down the block, Puss stopped and ran up the steps of a small house. Lifting the big brass knocker, he let it fall with a rap that soon brought a maid to the door. "Goodness me!" she exclaimed. "What have we here?" "Is anybody at home?" said Puss, flicking the dust off the red tops of his boots in a most unconcerned way, as if indeed he had been accustomed to making calls all his life. The maid held out a little silver tray. "I will take your card." Poor Puss! He didn't have any. "But I'm Puss in Boots, Jr.," he said with such a lovely purr that the maid opened the door wide. "Come in, dear Puss, Jr." Just then Wee Willie Winkie ran down the stairs, crying, "Are the children in their beds? It's past 8 o'clock." Closing the front door, he whispered through the keyhole, "Are the children in their beds?" And before he reached the sidewalk, he turned back and, rapping on the window, cried, "It's past 8 o'clock." "Little kittens don't need Wee Willie Winkie, I guess," said the maid, tickling Puss Jr.'s head. "Hush-a-bye, baby, lie still with thy daddy. Thy mammy has gone to the mill to get some meal to bake a cake. So pray, my dear baby, lie still." The lullaby made Puss Jr. sleepy, for the man's voice was low and tender, and Puss was very tired. In a sleepy voice he asked, "And has the mother gone to the mill to get the meal for the cake?" "Indeed she has," replied the maid. After this she went into the kitchen. Puss gazed about him for a while and then dropped off to sleep, hearing the drowsy voice of the man upstairs singing, "Hush-a-bye, baby, lie still with thy daddy." All was very quiet. "Tick-tock, tick-tock," said the big clock, and a mouse peeped out of his hole and laughed to himself when he saw Puss fast asleep. He tiptoed over to the red-top boots that had fallen off Puss Jr.'s tired little feet, and even crawled inside. Perhaps he wanted to tell his father how brave he had been to go inside a big cat's high-top boots while the owner snored close by. Presently he ran over to the hole in the wall. I imagine it did not take him long to tell his story, for in a few minutes 3 little mice crept out and tiptoed over to where Puss lay sleeping so soundly. "Did you ever see any nicer boots than these?" Mr. Mouse put on a very wise expression. "They are certainly a very fine pair of boots," said he, "and they have the mark of a royal cobbler." Gracious me, how interesting!" cried Mrs. Mouse. "Let me take a look." And she inspected Puss Jr.'s footwear with much interest. "Beautifully made," she said. "This must be a royal cat, for otherwise why should he have a royal cobbler?" "I only hope he is not a royal mouser," replied Mr. Mouse. "And I think, now that we have seen all we have, that we had better return, for who knows when he may awake?" So they scampered off, leaving Puss Jr. still sound asleep. End of chapter 6.